The office clock read 6:35 p.m. on a quiet Friday, when I finally decided to call it a day, though truthfully, I'd been buried in spreadsheets and pivot charts for hours. The only other light on the open plan floor came from the LEDs over empty cubicles, their hum as steady and predictable as the data I'd been polishing. I stretched, rubbed my tired eyes, and, spotting my cold cup of coffee, made a beeline for the break room, craving one last sip before the weekend. As I stepped around the corner, my footsteps echoed unnaturally loud between rows of vacant desks. The usual after-hours hush settled in, broken only by the distant whir of the server fan. But then, suddenly, a sharp, heated voice shattered the calm. I froze mid-stride, heart skipping a beat. Another voice replied, crisp and measured, yet laced with frustration. Curiosity overpowered common sense. I crept closer to conference room B, where the frosted glass walls usually masked the mundane hum of weekday meetings. Tonight, though, they served as a window into a storm. Through the nearly transparent central pane, I saw them, Marcus from sales, sleeves rolled up, face flushed, standing at the far end of the table and brandishing a printed slide deck like evidence in court. Opposite him, Jenna from product development sat rigid in her chair, porcelain skin nearly pulsing with contained anger, her arms folded across a stack of technical documents. I pressed my phone lightly against the cool glass, switching on the recorder. My pulse thudded in my ears as I caught the opening lines. Marcus' voice taut. We committed to a launch date 3 months ago. Now the client's deadline is tomorrow, and your team still hasn't delivered the code they need. Jenna, voice low, precise. Rushing our QA phase would introduce critical bugs. You knew the technical risks. Don't pin your unrealistic quotas on us. Their back and forth rippled through the room. Marcus slammed his palm on the table, scattering charts and color-coded spreadsheets. Jenna's eyes flicked to a corner monitor, then back to him, jaw clenched. From my vantage point, I could see the entire table strewn with eraser-smudged notes, empty coffee mugs, and the remnants of what must have been a hastily arranged whiteboard session. I watched as 2 colleagues hovered by the doorway, uncertain whether to intervene or flee. Their faces betrayed a mix of awe and discomfort. None of us were used to witnessing conflict so raw and unfiltered. In that suspended moment, the polished image Orion Tech projected, of sleek collaboration and unspoken respect, cracked wide open, revealing the pressure cooker beneath. For 10 intense minutes, I recorded every accusation, every retort, every exasperated pause. Voices fluctuated between indignant shouts and desperate pleas for practical solutions. I could almost taste the tension in the air. Equal parts resentment, fear of failure, and an unspoken longing for resolution. When the argument finally wound down, Marcus pacing, his shoulders slumped, Jenna gathering her papers with a controlled sigh, the room felt charged, like a stage left smoldering after the final act. As the door slid shut behind them, I retreated into the hallway, my hand shaking slightly as I fumbled to turn off the recorder. Clutching my lukewarm coffee and the weight of what I'd just witnessed, I realized 2 teams I'd always admired for their professionalism were more fractured than anyone would admit. Sometimes the real story isn't what happens in the daylight boardrooms, but in the tense twilight when masks slip and the truth fights its way to the surface. When Monday morning rolled around, the hushed corridors of Orion Tech buzzed with an undercurrent of tension I'd never sensed before. The cheerful, good mornings, that typically brightened our workspace had given way to cautious whispers and furtive glances. Word of a weekend incident in conference room B had spread like wildfire, though most knew only vague, distorted fragments about sales and product coming to blows. It felt surreal to hear others talk about an event I'd witnessed firsthand, their stories twisted and exaggerated by the rumor mill. My phone buzzed incessantly with tentative pings from coworkers, WhatsApp and Slack notifications lighting up with nervous speculation. Did you hear about the big blow-up? Any idea who started it? Was it Marcus or Jenna? What are they even arguing about? Each question pulled at my conscience, and each time, I chose silence. I kept the recording on my phone hidden, the weight of it growing heavier by the hour. What had started as curiosity had now morphed into a secret burden. When I reached my desk, a new reality confronted me immediately. My inbox, normally flooded each morning with invites to meetings, stand-ups, and collaborative sessions, sat eerily empty. Routine check-ins had disappeared from my calendar overnight, quietly reassigned or canceled altogether. People I collaborated closely with for months suddenly seemed distant, meeting my attempts at small talk with curt nods and sidelong glances, before quickly excusing themselves. At our daily stand-up, tension reached new heights. The project I had been diligently leading for weeks was abruptly reassigned to Marcus's team under the vague justification of alignment and strategic coherence. Marcus shot me a glance, his eyes cold, accusing, an unspoken blame that felt like an icy blade. Jenna, normally so friendly, barely glanced up from her laptop screen, her jaw tight and her posture rigid, as if bracing herself for an invisible attack. It was becoming painfully clear. Battle lines were drawn, and anyone caught between sales and product risked severe collateral damage. I felt trapped, uncertain how my accidental presence at that late-night argument had suddenly thrust me into a silent storm of suspicion and mistrust. As the days dragged on, the atmosphere worsened. Productivity began to plummet sharply. Sales openly complained about slipping targets and pointed fingers at the product teams. Incompetence. Product development responded with sharp retorts, calling out sales, unrealistic promises, to clients. Email threads multiplied, each longer and more aggressive than the last, long, dense paragraphs layered with passive-aggressive language, copied to ever-expanding lists of CC recipients, dragging more employees into the conflict. Soon, conversations in break rooms and hallways turned sour, each interaction a minefield where one wrong word could ignite another round of frustration. I watched helplessly as the vibrant company culture I'd once admired warped into a defensive, tense battleground. Two departments determined to blame each other, oblivious to the damage they were causing to everyone around them. By Wednesday evening, drained and overwhelmed, I knew I couldn't remain passive any longer. I sat alone at my desk, staring blankly at my screen, the blinking cursor a symbol of my hesitation. I had clear evidence, unbiased, indisputable proof, that could help leadership see beyond the accusations and egos. Yet, exposing it meant taking an enormous risk. My hand shook slightly as I composed an anonymous message to HR, detailing the growing hostility, outlining the true source of the conflict, and attaching my recording. Each typed sentence felt heavier than the last, the gravity of the potential consequences settling on my shoulders. Before clicking send, I paused, hesitating as doubt crept into my thoughts. Would this fix things or only make it worse? Was I stepping into a conflict better left untouched? But deep down, I knew silence wasn't neutrality, it was complicity. Exposing the truth might be painful, but allowing this toxic division to grow unchecked was far more dangerous. Taking a deep breath, I clicked send. The email disappeared from my outbox, the attachment carrying with it the quiet hope of reconciliation and the undeniable fear of backlash. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, knowing I had just altered the course of events at Orion Tech forever. The next morning felt surreal. The moment I stepped into Orion Tech, a subtle tension hung thickly in the air, magnified tenfold from the previous days. As I made my way to my desk, I caught glimpses of huddled conversations abruptly silenced upon my approach. I wondered if somehow, word had gotten out about my anonymous message, or worse, my recording. Paranoia crept in, gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. I opened my email inbox with dread, bracing myself for backlash. At first, I saw only routine messages. But then my eyes froze on one email marked "Urgent Meeting Request," sent directly from HR. My pulse quickened as I clicked it open. "Dear Alex, we request your presence at an urgent confidential meeting today at 11 a.m. in room 304. Please confirm attendance immediately. Regards, Susan Parker, head of HR." My heart sank. They knew. The careful anonymity I tried to maintain was unraveling. With trembling fingers, I typed a short reply. "Confirmed, I'll be there." The hours leading up to the meeting crawled by painfully slow. I struggled to focus on even the simplest tasks, my mind consumed by uncertainty. Had I done the right thing? Or had my effort to restore peace only deepened the wound? Finally, the time arrived. As I approached room 304, the sight through the frosted glass sent a jolt through my stomach. Marcus and Jenna were already seated, both looking tense and uncomfortable. Beside them sat Susan from HR, her expression unreadable, alongside David, the company's VP. Someone who only stepped in during severe crisis. The gravity of the situation hit me all at once. This wasn't just about departmental conflict anymore. It had escalated into a crisis that could shape careers and company futures. Susan greeted me formally as I entered, motioning to a chair opposite Marcus and Jenna. I avoided their eyes, taking my seat quietly, anxiety knotting in my stomach. "Thank you for coming, Alex," Susan began gently yet firmly. "As you probably guessed, we received your message and the attached recording. Normally, we prefer open dialogue, but under these circumstances, your evidence has proved critical. Marcus, Jenna, before we continue, I'd like to play part of the recording." Marcus shifted uneasily, casting a suspicious glance my way. Jenna's jaw tightened, but she nodded stiffly. The room filled with the sound of their confrontation. Every harsh word, every slammed fist, every accusation echoing painfully off the walls. As the playback continued, Marcus visibly winced, his bravado draining away. Jenna lowered her eyes, the reality of their heated words clearly hitting home. When the recording stopped, silence gripped the room, tense and heavy. David finally broke it, his voice calm yet stern. "I think we can all agree this isn't how we want to handle disagreements," he said. "It's clear both of your teams have valid frustrations, but letting things escalate to this extent is unacceptable." Marcus started to object, but David raised a hand. "Marcus, we understand sales has high-pressure targets. Jenna, we appreciate product's commitment to quality. The problem here isn't your respective goals, it's the total breakdown in communication and respect." Susan spoke up softly, addressing me directly. "Alex, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Without your courage, this might have continued to fester unnoticed." Marcus glanced at me sharply, his expression unreadable. Jenna's eyes met mine briefly, filled with regret and perhaps gratitude. David continued, "We're initiating immediate mediation between both teams. Marcus, Jenna, I expect full cooperation. This needs to be resolved openly, respectfully, and quickly. Further, Alex, given your impartial perspective, we'd like you to be part of these mediation sessions." A ripple of surprise shot through me. My intention was never to become a participant, only to surface the truth. Yet now, I'd been thrust into the heart of the resolution. As the meeting adjourned, Marcus lingered, approaching me cautiously. "Listen," he started awkwardly, glancing down. "I know we're under pressure, but I didn't mean for you, or anyone else, to get caught up in this." Jenna stepped closer, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Alex, I'm sorry. Emotions ran high. Thanks for stepping in. I think we needed someone to break the cycle." I nodded slowly, relief mingled with lingering tension. "Let's just move forward," I replied gently. "We all want the same thing." Walking back to my desk, I reflected on the enormity of what had just transpired. By stepping forward, I'd risked my job, my relationships, even my reputation. Yet somehow, facing the storm directly had begun to clear the air. The healing wouldn't happen overnight, but we'd taken a critical first step. For better or worse, I was no longer just an observer. I'd become part of the solution, ready or not. The days following that tense meeting felt like navigating unfamiliar territory. I had transitioned overnight from a quiet analyst working behind spreadsheets to the unexpected mediator responsible for helping two major departments mend their fractured relationship. Initially, I doubted my ability to handle this newfound responsibility, wondering if I'd stepped too far into waters that might overwhelm me. HR organized a series of mediation workshops, led by an external consultant specializing in conflict resolution. Marcus, Jenna, their immediate deputies, and I sat in a neutral meeting space, its walls plastered with motivational posters emphasizing teamwork and open communication, ironic reminders of exactly what had broken down between sales and product. The first session was painfully awkward. Marcus and Jenna barely looked at each other, speaking only when prompted and offering clipped, careful responses. Tension seeped into every silence. As the mediator patiently probed each side's grievances, buried frustrations and resentments surfaced, some stemming from months, even years of misalignment. Marcus finally broke through his initial reticence, voice low but honest. "Look, my team is constantly under the gun. Clients expect perfection fast. Every missed deadline costs our reputation and revenue. When we can't deliver on promises, it reflects badly on all of us, not just sales." Jenna's posture softened slightly, nodding slowly before replying. "We understand, Marcus. But every rushed project sacrifices quality. We're blamed if we release products full of bugs. We're not opposed to moving quickly, but we need realistic timelines and better communication." It was the first moment of genuine clarity I'd witnessed between them. Small progress, but important. By the second session, the atmosphere began shifting. Instead of defensively clinging to their positions, both departments gradually acknowledged mutual responsibility. Marcus openly admitted that sales had overpromised to clients without confirming timelines, driven by fierce competition. Jenna conceded that product development had sometimes resisted flexibility, protecting their standards without clearly communicating the practical limitations to sales. Throughout these sessions, my role subtly evolved from silent observer to facilitator. My neutrality, something I'd initially doubted, became my greatest asset. I encouraged Marcus and Jenna to share specific instances where expectations hadn't aligned, facilitating calm and respectful dialogue instead of accusations. When conversations stalled, I offered gentle questions or reframed their comments, steering discussions back toward common goals. Outside the meeting rooms, the changes became tangible. Hallway exchanges softened. Email threads grew shorter, more direct, and constructive. Gradually, sales and product began collaborating again, rebuilding trust through small gestures, joint coffee breaks, shared lunches, and informal check-ins. One afternoon, I even overheard Marcus and Jenna laughing softly together, something unimaginable just weeks before. Yet not everyone embraced reconciliation easily. Some team members, still hurt by earlier friction, resisted efforts to repair relationships, wary of renewed trust. Marcus's lead sales executive, Rachel, expressed frustration openly during a mediation session. "We're supposed to just forget all the accusations? Pretend nothing happened?" Before anyone else could speak, Jenna leaned forward gently. "No, Rachel. We can't erase it. But we can acknowledge what went wrong, apologize sincerely, and build a better foundation moving forward. It's the only way. I watched as Rachel's shoulders relaxed slightly, surprised by the genuine empathy from someone she'd long viewed as adversarial. Each day became a quiet lesson in the power of vulnerability. Witnessing individuals who once traded harsh accusations now willing to admit mistakes and express genuine regret shifted my perspective profoundly. I recognized how easily misunderstandings and miscommunications escalate, and how simple honesty and humility can rebuild even the most damaged bridges. 2 weeks after our first mediation, HR organized a joint town hall for sales and product to publicly announce new initiatives developed through these sessions. Marcus and Jenna co-presented a collaborative roadmap outlining practical measures, regular cross-departmental meetings, realistic goal-setting processes, and transparent project timelines. Watching them stand side by side, communicating openly and with mutual respect, felt profoundly rewarding. At the close of the town hall, Marcus unexpectedly turned to address the assembled teams directly. "We're sorry for the disruption caused by our conflict. Moving forward, we're committed to transparent communication and mutual accountability, not just between sales and product, but across the entire company." Spontaneous applause filled the room. Jenna smiled softly, visibly moved, nodding her own commitment. I stood quietly to the side, feeling gratitude and relief. My anonymous email, originally meant as a desperate measure to stop chaos, had unexpectedly become the spark igniting genuine collaboration. Walking back to my desk afterward, Marcus caught up to me in the hallway, sincerity evident in his voice. "Alex, thank you. Without your courage, I'm not sure we'd have gotten here. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary." Jenna joined us, adding warmly, "You risked a lot, and you did it for the right reasons. Thanks for bringing us together again." In that moment, all lingering doubt faded. I hadn't intended to be a hero or a mediator. I simply acted from the conviction that truth, no matter how uncomfortable, was essential for real progress. Yet somehow, stepping out of my comfort zone had reshaped not only their teams, but also my own sense of purpose. I returned to my desk feeling lighter, knowing that sometimes courage isn't about avoiding conflict, but about facing it directly, calmly, and honestly, no matter how daunting the task. In the weeks following the town hall, Orion Tech underwent a transformation, one subtle enough to miss at first glance, yet profound enough to redefine the very heart of our workplace. Open hostility gave way to genuine collaboration, suspicion melted into trust, and rigid departmental boundaries became flexible pathways of communication. The mediation had not only repaired the bridge between sales and product development, but had become a blueprint for resolving conflicts company-wide. Other teams soon adopted our model, initiating honest dialogues before tensions escalated. Leadership recognized the value in proactively addressing disagreements, reshaping company culture from one of polite avoidance to one of transparent, constructive engagement. I found myself frequently invited into conversations across various teams, not as a mediator this time, but as a trusted advisor. My unintentional role as the voice of reason and clarity during the crisis had earned me credibility far beyond my initial expectations. While initially intimidating, this new position became deeply fulfilling. Instead of merely crunching numbers, I now found purpose in helping colleagues communicate better, navigate challenging conversations, and build stronger relationships. Marcus and Jenna, once bitter rivals, forged a powerful partnership. Their weekly sync-ups, something unthinkable mere months before, became legendary for their productivity and positivity. Projects delivered on time increased substantially, and employee morale in both teams soared. Marcus even initiated an open-door policy encouraging his sales reps to seek input from product development early in their client discussions. Jenna responded in kind, offering regular technical workshops to help sales teams better understand product timelines and capabilities. One afternoon, as I was wrapping up work, Marcus knocked gently on my cubicle wall. "Got a moment, Alex?" he asked, a warm smile replacing his once cautious gaze. "Sure," I replied, intrigued. We stepped into a quiet meeting room, and Marcus placed a formal-looking envelope on the table. "The leadership team wanted you to have this personally," he began, voice sincere. "It's a commendation letter. Official recognition for stepping up during a critical moment, bringing everyone back together." I opened the letter carefully, heart quickening as I read the words of gratitude and acknowledgement signed by our CO. It was both humbling and affirming. "I appreciate this more than you know," I said softly. Marcus leaned forward, looking thoughtful. "Honestly, I've learned a lot about leadership from watching you. Sometimes, leadership isn't about your job title. It's about doing the right thing even when it's hard." Jenna joined us moments later, having heard about our conversation. "Alex, the whole team owes you more than we've said. If you hadn't stepped in, our departments might still be at each other's throats. You reminded us what it means to truly work together." Touched by their sincerity, I reflected on my journey. When I'd stayed late that fateful Friday, I'd never imagined my simple act of recording an argument would spiral into an experience that transformed my career, and perhaps my life. Months later, during our year-end gathering, the CEO stood before the company and highlighted this story as an example of courage, initiative, and integrity. Hearing him share my journey publicly was overwhelming, yet incredibly rewarding. Colleagues applauded warmly, smiles genuine, respect evident. Yet, beyond recognition or commendations, my most valuable takeaway was a newfound understanding of conflict. I learned that tension, when handled openly and respectfully, isn't something to fear. It reveals hidden truths, uncovers buried frustrations, and, when addressed courageously, fosters authentic growth. I also learned about myself. Initially hesitant to step into the spotlight, I realized my quiet strength could inspire change. I'd shifted from a passive participant in my career to an active force for positive transformation. Now, facing difficulties no longer filled me with dread but with quiet confidence, knowing I had the power to make a difference. As I packed up my desk that evening, preparing for a long-awaited holiday break, Jenna and Marcus appeared again. "Heading out for a quick celebration dinner," Marcus said casually, smiling. "Care to join?" I accepted immediately. We left the office together, the atmosphere relaxed and warm, completely unlike the tension-filled days we'd navigated months before. As we walked toward our cars, laughing and reflecting on the year, I felt a deep gratitude for the difficult journey that had brought us here. Conflict had tested us, yes. But in overcoming it, we'd built something truly remarkable: trust, empathy, and genuine camaraderie. The crisis had not only changed our teams, it had changed each of us individually. We'd emerged stronger, wiser, and better equipped for future challenges. Driving home later that night, I replayed everything in my mind: the argument, the recording, the fear, the bravery, the healing, and finally, this new beginning. It struck me deeply that sometimes, the hardest moments, the ones we dread most, are the ones that truly define who we become. I smiled softly, grateful for the serendipity of staying late that Friday evening. Who knew that accidentally witnessing a heated argument between two departments could ultimately teach me everything I needed to learn about courage, honesty, and leadership? I certainly hadn't, but I was grateful it did.